welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be another Hermes questions and answers video. I think I'm up to number 5, but at some point I'm going to stop saying what I'm up to and just going to rely on the number on the screen. So before I dive into today's video, if you do love luxury videos and you love Hermes and you aren't already subscribed to my channel, then I would love if you would hit that subscribe button below and also the bell to be notified when I upload new videos, which is twice a week on a Wednesday and on a weekend. Okay, so let's dive right into the questions. I am answering, I think, around about 13 questions. And the first one is going to be about specifically where we are in Sydney with the Sydney boutique. And the question is, do you mind if I also ask about your experience getting bags from the Hermes store in Sydney? I've had my name down for months for a Pinkerton or a Kelly to go and haven't had any luck. I'm giving up hope, and these aren't the super crazy hard to get bags. It's so tough. I thought they'd have more stock with less tourists. And you know what? I thought the same thing too, but they did actually have more stock at the start of the year. Pretty much round about January, actually between January and April was pretty much the best time in 2020 to actually score a bag or get any of the kind of bags like the Pinkerton, that sort of thing. I'm not sure if the Kelly to go was out yet, but it was a really good time of year at the very start of 2020, and that was because lockdown had started to happen in China and Hong Kong, and a lot of our tourists that we get are actually from China and Hong Kong, and they do shop at the Sydney store. I do personally know some people who have friends that are from Hong Kong and China, and then they come to the Sydney store and they spend a lot of money, and then they claim their tax back when they go through the airport at the do their GST refund, so they then get 10% back as well when they leave the country with their goods. And the price on Hermes in Australia is actually less than what it is in China and Hong Kong. So I do know that for a fact that at the start of this year it was better because of the lockdowns. However, now as a result of the lockdowns that have happened in France, stock is getting far more scarce. The production line is not working the same as it used to, so this has actually affected the resale market as well. Prices have gone up because of the France lockdowns. Basically, to answer your question, how's my experience with getting bags from the Sydney store? You know what, it hasn't exactly been easy per se, but in some ways I'm also quite blessed and grateful that I have been able to get what I had got. The first bag I ever got only took about 4 months of building a relationship with my sales associate, but I do always say that when it comes to your first elusive bag, it is easier because Hermes like to make it special and they want to introduce you to the brand and the beautiful craftsmanship. So the first bag is generally always easier. However, my second bag, which was my Birkin 30 in Etoupe, that didn't come for 18 months later, and I definitely spent over 1-to-1 the cost, so that meant that I spent more than the cost of the bag on other items at the store. But yeah, that took 18 months, and now I'm currently waiting on my third elusive bag, you know, Birkin, Kelly or Constance, and it has been almost 2 years. It'll be exactly 2 years in January, and by the time I upload this video it may very well be 2 years. But I do have some other bags. Like I did get my mini Ruly in Berenia from the store. I asked my sales associate specifically for that bag. So I would say my suggestion is you really need to build a relationship with a sales associate, continue to shop with them, contact them by email, by phone, whatever they kind of prefer. My sales associate prefers email, and I asked her if I could order in the mini Ruly in Berenia for Berg, and she ordered it in based on whatever hardware France was going to issue, and they issued silver hardware. My Bolide 27 I also got this year from the sales associate. I asked for it just before my birthday and asked if she had like any bags available. Otherwise, if she didn't have like a Birkin or a Kelly or something, then you know I wanted a Bolide 27 or a Pinkerton, so she offered me that. That was in Cray. And then I also got a month later, I asked again, I'm like, oh, my birthday is now officially here. By any chance, do you have any other bags? And like, I'm going to come in anyway and pick up some other items for my birthday. And she offered me the Pinkerton 18 in blue pale. So I was very fortunate this year that I did get those two beautiful bags. And my sales associate was able to at least come through on those. However, I do kind of think that they were offered to me because there was no chance a Birkin or a Kelly was going to be offered to me this year. And that could be for the reason that perhaps I didn't spend in the desirable categories. you know, I'm a believer of you should only shop what you want to and what you love. And this year my wish list did not consist of fine jewelry or ready to wear. However, there is a homewares item that I am going to be adding, and I'm not sure if I would have already revealed it on my channel, but I'm just going to tell you now, there is a homeware item, and that will be the first time I ever shopped in the homeware category. So when it comes to Hermes, they do like for you to shop in all categories, and I think that's why there was no elusive bag coming this year. And this is just specifically with my store. My store is just more like that, and that's because there's just high demand, not enough stock. It's just the way it is. It's the reality of it. It's not the same everywhere. But yeah, in a nutshell, my answer to that question is it hasn't been easy for me either. I have been asking for a Constance to go. I've been asking for like a mini Lindy for like over 6 months now, and it hasn't happened. But you just need a sales associate to at least ask and try to waitlist for. But I would think that the Pinkerton should at least be obtainable, and perhaps the Kelly to go. But like I said, production line isn't very good at the moment because of France lockdown, so you might just need a little bit more patience. But I would say the rule of thumb here is get a sales associate, stick with that person, and just ask to waitlist, and hopefully it'll come through at least on the waitlist. The question is, I live in Florida, which is humidity galore. What Hermes leather would you recommend for my climate? And this is a fantastic question. And I answered her already, but I'm going to answer for you guys as well. For Florida, I think that epsom is probably one of the best leathers for you guys. Or anywhere that's really humid, and that's because it's actually an artificial grain. It is a heat pressed grain. So I do have my epsom Bolide here. So this leather doesn't go through a tumble process, which is how they get the grains on the other leathers. This one is literally the leather as is, and then they use a heat press to actually stamp the grain on, and that's how they get this kind of this grain effect here. If that's focusing, I'm not sure. There we go. Some people say that epsom feels a bit plasticky, it feels a bit laminated, and that's because it is like an artificial grain, it's heat pressed, so that's why you get that kind of laminated feeling. So I would recommend, yeah, epsom is a great option because it's not a soft leather, it's got that artificial grain that kind of gives it that bit of a coating sort of feel. My other recommendations for humid climates would also be Swift and Novillo, and also Evercolor leather. So I do have my Swift Kelly here, Evercolor Constance, and also an Evercolor Kelly Dance. And the reason that I actually recommend these leathers, probably Swift the most, is because these are actually quite oil soaked leathers. They're quite buttery and saturated with like oil, and they also go through the tumble process as well. But that oil soaked means that you are less likely that it will absorb the moisture and the humidity in the air, because as we know, water and oil do not mix. So because of the fact that it's a bit more oil soaked, the water doesn't really get to penetrate into the surface, like the humidity doesn't get to penetrate so much into the surface. So you probably find that you won't have to worry so much about, you know, the effects of humidity. Whereas like Togo and Clemence aren't very oil soaked. So you may find that if you live in a humid climate, those bags probably aren't the best bags to go for, unless you're going to keep a very close eye on them, use a dehumidifier and that sort of stuff. So yeah, Novillo, Swift, Evercolor, all very oil soaked leathers. Swift more so. Actually as well, Brenia would be a fantastic leather if you can get your hands on it, especially the original Brenia Smooth, the Smooth Brenia, which is available in Fauve in like the vintage market, and sometimes Hermes still does it as well. There's also Ebene Brenia, and I think there's another one too. But yeah, that traditional Smooth Brenia is very, very oil soaked, very oil soaked. So that's why oils, when you touch Brenia leather, they do soak it up and they become a darker color. So they do patina with the use of your, you know, your hands and that actual oils and that sort of thing. So again, water and oil don't mix, so I do recommend more oil soaked, buttery, soft leathers for humid, moist climates. Next question is, I'm wondering how you feel about the Lindy or the shoulder Kelly or Birkin. Basically, I can tell you I'm not the biggest fan of the Lindy. I only like the mini Lindy. Sometimes I kind of like the Lindy 26 sometimes, but sometimes I don't. I feel like the Lindy design, like with the mini Lindy, I do like it because it's crossbody and it sits like in its standard shape. But when you go with the Lindy 26 and Lindy 30 and up, it folds into like this dumpling, and I don't really like that look. It doesn't really do it for me. It kind of, I don't know, it just doesn't really do it for me. Also, you wear it on the shoulder and it's quite bulky sort of looking. You can hand carry it, but then I kind of think, well, why would you hand carry that? Like, why go with that bag, which is like to hand carry it, when you could go for like the garden party or the, you know, the Birkin, the Pinkerton, that sort of thing. As for whether the actual shoulder Birkin and the shoulder Kelly, I do prefer the shoulder Birkin just because of the ease of actually getting in the bag. Because if you go for the shoulder Kelly, it's still got the same closure that the Kelly bag has, and if you're putting that on your arm, it's going to be annoying to get in and out of the bag, especially because it sits up quite high under your arm. It's not like with the Kelly bag, how, you know, you've got it on your shoulder, it's more natural to get into the bag. But on the shoulder Kelly, it is not a natural feeling. But the shoulder Birkin, it stays open just like you can use the standard Birkin. It sits under your arm. It's quite wide though. It's like 40 centimeters wide. So it is wider even than the Birkin 30. So if you could imagine, if you had this under your arm, not that I can fit it under, but if you had this and it was like 40 centimeters wide, that would be quite a big bag to carry under your arm. But I do like the shoulder Birkin. I think the shoulder Birkin's pretty cool. I think it's a nice, unique piece. It's great for a collector piece as well because it is discontinued, the Jean Paul Cartier design. But yeah, I think, yeah, go for it if you like it. If you like either of those bags, don't just take my opinion as, you know, the be all and end all. If you like them, go for them. You do you. Next question I have is about Epsom leather, and someone has asked me what are my thoughts on Epsom. I have said this before on my channel, I am not the biggest fan of Epsom, and the reason is that I do find that it does tend to scratch easily because of my natural nails. Now, I did own an Epsom Constance, and that's when I actually found that it got scratched the most because it's quite a structured bag. Whereas the Evercolor Constance is not as structured because it's a softer leather. So I don't really like Epsom for a Constance 24. Constance 18 is not so bad because it's a bit smaller. I don't mind Epsom on a Birkin because Birkins are a little more like relaxed sort of feeling, even though Epsom's a firm leather. It's just finds that the retorn shape makes it a bit softer. It's not as rigid. Whereas like on the Bolide 27, Epsom is very rigid. It's pretty much like that on like the Constance 24, except thankfully enough, this is a smaller trapeze sort of shape, so it's not so boxy, and I don't find it's as easy to scratch. However, I do already have a scratch on the corner, which is pretty much almost invisible. Now I've got to try and find which corner it was. But yeah, in a nutshell, I find that Epsom does scratch easily for me because I have natural nails. Also, I'm usually in a rush getting the kids in and out of the car. Oh, there it is. Probably can't really even see it anyway. But there is like a tiny little scratch just at the back of the bag. But because it's a light color, it doesn't show. And I also would say that Epsom is best for light colors for that very reason, that if you do happen to scratch your bag and it's a light color, it probably will not show as much as it would on the darker colors. I do also have a Blue Broom Bastia in Epsom, and I find that on the SLGs, Epsom is actually the best. It's the most hard wearing, and I feel like that's just because it's a smaller item. So it's a firm leather. I find that it doesn't get impression marks so easily, Epsom, but for the small items, it is just the best. And I also find that you just don't really scratch it so easily with it being a small item because you're not really, I don't know, I just don't scratch Epsom easily on SLGs. Also because it's a single piece of leather, it's not as firm, so it's a little bit more softer. It's got a bit more give, so that also probably helps to not scratching the leather too. But yeah, Epsom, not the biggest fan, but I do recommend it for a lot of reasons as well. I recommend it on light colors. I recommend it for SLGs. I recommend it for the Retorn Kelly, for the Retorn Birkin. But at the same time, the Retorn style is supposed to be more relaxed, and Epsom kind of stops it from being relaxed. So it's a little bit of like, it kind of is, in a way, it's a bit of a juxtaposition for what the Retorn is supposed to be. But I can kind of appreciate it in some way. Like, say if I wanted a Birkin in white, then I would definitely probably want it to be an Epsom. If I wanted a white Kelly, I'd probably perhaps prefer it to be an Epsom, even if it was Retorn. Sellier, I would still go for an Epsom Sellier Kelly, but I would have to bear in mind that it will get scratches. I had an Epsom Sellier Kelly 25 before and it got scratches, and it was in Rose Japua, so I'd probably just try to stick on the lighter side. But however, as we know with Hermes, it's not exactly easy to always pick and choose, especially when you're offered from the boutique. So if I was offered an Epsom Sellier K25, you know, Kelly 25 black, I would take it. Even knowing that I could potentially scratch it, there is always the Hermes Spar as well. The Hermes Spa, in my experience when it comes to Epsom, doesn't do the most perfect job versus sparring like Swift, Evercolor, Togo, Clemence and all that sort of thing. But they still do a pretty darn good job that it is almost undetectable. It really just depends the kind of scratches that you have. But I don't know if I mean, I've given you my opinion on Epsom, but I'm not quite sure exactly what you sort of really needed to know about Epsom. So hopefully that's kind of addressed your concerns and your question in a nutshell. But yeah, let's move on to the next one. The next one is, what insert do you use for your Bolide 27 and any recommendations for a Bolide 31? The insert I actually use for my Bolide 27 is my insert for my Kelly 25. So this is an insert from 7 Rue Paradis, and it's in the Kelly 25 Return. It just works amazingly. So I'm so glad that this actually works for my Bolide 27. Let me take it out. So it does fit side to side, pretty much almost wall to wall as well. And I think that's because the Bolide 27 for the Kelly 25 is pretty much not that big of a difference. It's only 2 centimeters. For the Bolide 31, I would suggest the Kelly 28 insert in Return. Not the Kelly 32 because it's going to be too big. Definitely the Kelly 28. Return only. Don't go the Sellier because the Sellier is more pointed, because obviously the Sellier bag is the outside stitch. So stick with the Return one, the Kelly 28 from 7 Rue Paradis. Don't go with the Birkin one because the Birkin one is wider, whereas the Bolide is actually a more narrow sort of bag. And the insert stops just at the point where it gets too narrow anyway. You know I have a coupon code with 7 Rue Paradis, so if you're just needing the one insert, it's POF30 and you'll get €30 off. But if you need 2 inserts, which I recommend if you have more than one Hermes bag, and these inserts are multifunctional, like I said, this is from the Kelly 25 and I use it in my Bolide 27. So, you know, do think outside of the box. If you do need 2 inserts, the coupon code for €70 off is POF70. And yeah, I'm an affiliate with 7 Rue Paradis. I love their inserts. I've tried so many and they are the only inserts I will now ever use. Another question I have is, which do I prefer as an everyday bag, the Constance 18 or the Birkin 25? Now, I don't have a Birkin 25 anymore right now, but who's to say that I won't have one again in the future? And out of the 2 as an everyday bag, I would definitely say the Constance 18, and that is because the Birkin 25, I'll use my Birkin 30 as an example, doesn't actually fit in the crook of your arm. So say for example, if you're like me and you've got kids, you can't put your bag in here to then hold your kids' hands. You can't put your bag in here to grab stuff. It doesn't work. You can only have it on your wrist. So could you imagine like trying to hold your children's hands? Could you imagine like wearing a big winter coat, layers, and you would only have your bag literally in your hand only, and that's all you can do, and you may not even be able to get it on your wrist, or you've got to pull your sleeves up and expose your wrist to cold weather? Yeah, the Birkin 25 is not a good everyday bag. I would only add it probably for the sake of collecting, you know what I mean? But everyday bag, it's definitely not it. The Birkin 30 is a much better bag. But you did ask about the Constance 18, and I don't have a Constance 18. I do have a mini Ruly though. And I can say that the capacity of the mini Ruly is a little bit more than the Constance 18. However, the biggest selling point with both bags, mini Ruly and Constance 18, is that you can actually use it crossbody. So that does make it a bit easier as an everyday kind of bag, especially if you have a lifestyle like mine where you need to be hands-free. The only downfall with the Constance is that the buckle is pretty cumbersome when it comes to opening and closing. And I'll use my Constance 24 as an example. Like when you have it on you, you have to pretty much hold the buckle with your 2 fingers and lift it up to get into your bag, and then to close it you've got to delicately marry it up again and then push it closed. If you don't do this, what will happen is you will scratch the leather underneath here, which I've done before, and you'll have so many scratches. You'll also scratch the hardware if you don't line it up properly. So again, you've got to kind of delicately open it like that, and you got to, if you don't marry it up, this part underneath will be scratching all over your hardware. Yeah, luckily I know this with the Constance, so I've been able to take care of this, but it's just one of the downfalls with the Constance, unfortunately. But it would be the better everyday bag than the Birkin 25. I did actually get like a statement that was on my reaction video, and I kind of felt like it warranted being in the questions and answer video, because I feel like this is something that's a bit of like a misconception. But basically the statement is, there is a reason you pay $12K for a handbag with the expectation of perfection. Basically, this is my answer, and don't take it in a way where it's like an excuse, because it definitely isn't, because I do feel that when it comes to luxury with the price point, you want to kind of you should have an expectation that you're getting fantastic quality, almost perfect, but fantastic quality. It should feel luxurious and all that sort of stuff. But let me just answer what I kind of have in my notes here. Okay, so Hermes is more expensive, but that doesn't mean that the handbags are going to be perfect. The price tag doesn't mean that there is perfect craftsmanship. It doesn't mean that there is a perfect human to make the bag. It doesn't work that way. We are humans. We can't do perfect. It doesn't exist. Luxury is expensive because it's the brand that you pay for. Yes, that's why it is expensive. And the premium increases with the type of manufacturing, quality, demand, and elusivity. Okay, so the premium increases with the types of manufacturing, quality, demand, and elusivity. That is a very key point here. So obviously Louis Vuitton is less than Hermes. Chanel is starting to get up there with the Hermes price point. But when you look on the actual, like when you scale this, we know that the manufacturing of Hermes is one artisan that makes the bag. So that's why the Birkin takes 48 hours, the Kelly is a day, just over a day. And it's one person making it. We're not going along assembly line where you've got 5 people that are making the handles, 5 people making the sangles, 5 people that are doing the back of the bag. We don't have that with Hermes. It is one person pouring their heart and soul in the crafting of this beautiful bag. That is how it works with Hermes. So that is a manufacturing element that ups their prices. Obviously we know their quality means, well, the quality is better because of the fact that it's not an assembly line process. It is one person that is pouring their heart and soul in it, and they actually are putting their artisan stamp on the bag, so it's linked to them. When it goes back for the Hermes spa, if the artisan still works there, they are going to be the one that works on their bag. So that means that they're more accountable when it comes to quality, and obviously Hermes has quality control as well. And we know that Hermes is very high in demand and very elusive, very hard to get. You have to spend, you have to show loyalty in order to be offered a bag. So this, all of that combined inflates the price. That is why their pricing is so high. As to whether it is actually literally worth the price, no, it's not. No luxury ever really is worth their price tag. You are paying for the brand. But there is a justification as to why their price is higher than Chanel, why their price is higher than Louis Vuitton, why it's higher than YSL, and all that jazz. And it's because, and why it's higher than Dior, of course, I forgot them for a moment, and it's because of those key points, is that their manufacturing is far better than the other brands, their quality is far better, and the demand and elusivity is obviously greatly, extremely more than those other brands. Okay, so to use some more examples as well, the Louis Vuitton Pochette Matisse keeps increasing rapidly because of its demand, but the quality hasn't changed, the manufacturing hasn't changed for that bag. It's still an assembly line process for the bag. Yes, it's handmade, but there are multiple people that go along the process in making the bag. It's not one artisan from point to point that is making this bag. So we know that the manufacturing hasn't changed, the quality, I mean, it's Louis Vuitton. I mean, sometimes you get crap, sometimes you get really good. I know that I got a bag that had glue residue all over it and had a massive bump in the canvas that wouldn't go away. It was like a hard bump. So unfortunately, Louis Vuitton sometimes does have bad quality, and it's more, you do tend to see it a little more than what you would perhaps see it with Hermes. Hermes is very rare, but that could be because of the fact that Louis Vuitton produces so many bags and they push out so much because of the demand that sometimes the quality does slip because they're wanting to try and meet customer demand, obviously meet profits. So, you know, but the Pochette Matisse is an example that even though nothing has changed, the price has really gone up quite a lot. And even though the brand always has price increases, the Pochette Matisse has increased greater than the standard price increase. Another example is again with Chanel. It's very high demand, very big, massive Asian market base for Chanel, and also a lot of in the US as well. Chanel has grown massive demand across Europe, US, and all of that. So they have upped their prices. We know that they have some major price increases. However, they haven't really changed all too much in quality. Sometimes quality has declined. But yeah, that is kind of the gist that I'm trying to get at, is that with Hermes, you are paying for more of that quality aspect. You are paying for the handmade, you are paying for the fact that it's one artisan, and you are paying an inflated price tag because of its elusivity versus the luxury counterparts that I've mentioned. it's all a part of added luxury value. There is an equation for added luxury value. If you go and research it, there is like more explanation of what the equation is. But needless to say, just because you're paying that much for Hermes doesn't mean that it is going to always be an absolutely 100% perfect handbag. And the same goes with all those luxury houses. It's just that Hermes, to standard, more oftenly, predominantly always produces what feels and looks like a perfect handbag. But we are humans, no one is perfect. Moving along to the next question. The question is, thoughts on the Birkin Sellier, and would I use an insert inside? So obviously I don't own a Birkin Sellier. I would love to own a Birkin Sellier. So my thoughts are, yes, I think it's a fantastic bag. I think it is so cool that they've now done the Birkin in the Sellier shape. So let me get my Kelly dance just to give you an idea of what we mean by Sellier. So the Kelly dance is actually done in the Sellier style, and the Sellier means that the stitching is actually on the outside. So if we look up close, you'll see that the stitching runs along the edges here, and that means that that's an outside stitch. Whereas the traditional Birkin is actually in the ratourne shape traditionally, and that means that there is no stitching on the outside, but there is the piping. So basically, to make the ratourne, when they stitch up the bag and they've made it, they turn it inside out, and that's how they get that ratourne with the piping and that more relaxed look. With the Sellier, it is actually made on the outside, so that's why the stitching stays on the outside. It doesn't get turned inside out. It is made in this shape, this Sellier structured shape. Now, the Birkin Sellier would mean that you're combining the best of both worlds, so you're getting the Birkin with the Sellier style. The only pitfall that I find would be potentially a problem with the Birkin Sellier is that even though like the Birkin is known to be a very casual kind of bit more carefree bag, you probably will get some corner wear, being that it's a Birkin Sellier and it's a bigger bag. So like the Kelly 25 in the Sellier, a little less prone to corner wear because it's a smaller bag, but the Birkin 25 in the Sellier is a slightly bigger bag overall. It's going to be wider in the actual depth of the bag. It's going to be handheld. You can't shoulder bag it, so you're going to be holding it around, so there's that chance of you kind of banging it around into things. Like even my Birkin has some very tiny bit of corner wear, pretty hardly noticeable, but if it was in a Sellier, it would definitely get corner wear much easier because of those protruded edges. So that is probably the only thing that I can see as being a bit of a problem for the Birkin Sellier, is the fact that it definitely is going to get corner wear. The other thing is that it's going to be a very structured shape. So the Birkin is typically known to be a relaxed bag. It's going to be more structured because of the Sellier shape. Also, the leathers that they're going to use are going to support that structure. So I believe that they're using the epsom, Madame Veau Monsieur, I think, something like that, whatever, I'm going to put the name on the screen. So they're using more structured leathers. I've seen also the Vache natural grained leather they've rechanged. Like Vache natural was traditionally a smooth unfinished leather, now they've turned it into like a grained version, and that is done for the Birkin Sellier. However, it is ridiculously rare. As to whether it stays around, I'm not sure. I mean, why not? Because they've had the Birkin Sellier before. It's actually just come back. So I don't think they were doing it in the Birkin 25 in the Sellier before. I think it was like a long time ago in the Birkin 30 and 35 and that. So it could stay around, or it could get discontinued. Who knows? But I do think it's a really cool bag. I think it's nice that there's that option in the Sellier style, the more structured. For a collector's point of view, I would love to have a Birkin Sellier in my collection, but I'd have to be more mindful of the corner wear, so it's not going to be as carefree as the standard Birkin in the ratourne. Moving on to the next one is Veau Jonathan Leather heavier than box leather. I don't have a Veau Jonathan Leather to actually compare to, and I don't have a box leather bag. I did have box leather pieces before, but I would actually say no, it's not. I think that Veau Jonathan would actually be more comparable to Swift, because it does look like it's a bit more of a buttery leather, would hold shape more than Swift, but based on what I can see being a smoother leather, it is probably lighter than Boxcalf, because Boxcalf is quite a hearty leather. It's very durable. It withstands a test of time. You see so many vintage Boxcalf bags that are still on the market that are over 30 years old. So that means that it's more than likely, and I do know typically with vintage leathers that they are quite thick and hearty. The downfall is that it can crack, but Veau Jonathan definitely wouldn't be heavier than Box. It would definitely be lighter, perhaps comparable to maybe like Evercolor leather, because Evercolor is similar to Swift. The next question is Mini Kelly or Kelly Pochette. I have neither of them, but if I could choose between either of them, I would go the Mini Kelly. So yeah, the Mini Kelly I would choose just because it has that shoulder strap. I think that makes it more versatile. The Kelly Pochette, you can actually put a shoulder strap on it. You are modifying the bag somewhat, so you'd have to kind of like tie a twilly and then just like hook a strap into the loops. You could wrap like the farandole chain to make it into a shoulder bag. So there are some ways to kind of use the Kelly Pochette as like a shoulder bag, but the Mini Kelly is designed with the shoulder strap, so aesthetically it does look better with the actual, you know, shoulder strap than what it would be to modify the Kelly Pochette. The only thing is that the Kelly Pochette does actually hold more than the Mini Kelly, and that is something that I do like about the Kelly Pochette. However, the Kelly Pochette is getting harder and harder to get, even though the Mini Kelly is quite hard to get. It's just that the Kelly Pochette is getting harder now. So I'm noticing that the Kelly Pochette is selling at a very high premium, even though the retail price is only around about like $11,000 Australian. I'm seeing it for like $16,000, $17,000. Mini Kelly retail price, I believe, is around about $13,500 Australian, but then the premium on that is like $20,000, even more. So it's definitely got a higher premium than Mini Kelly, but out of the two, if I could just pick either, I would just go the Mini Kelly. The last question, I'm going to leave it at this one, is best leather for rainy conditions. I live in Seattle, where there is a lot of rain, and currently own a Togo bag. And this is probably going to be similar to the answer that I gave for humidity, except that the only thing that I can sort of think of is that irregardlessly of humidity, if you are caught in a downpour, that is very different. A downpour of heavy rain can cause blistering on pretty much any leather, and I have seen it even happen with epsom, and people think that epsom is more water resistant, but the truth is if you're caught in a downpour, it will blister as well, and it is not a pretty sight, and it is not repairable either. Once it's blistered, pretty much the only thing they can do to repair it is completely change over that piece of leather that has the blistering, if it can be changed at the Hermes spa. I would actually say the best leather for situations where you're going to be caught in rain or rainy climates, that sort of thing, I would say Byrrhenia, traditional smooth Byrrhenia. And I spoke about this even with the humidity one, but traditional smooth Byrrhenia is probably the best one when it comes to being caught in a downpour. So many people that own the traditional Byrrhenia say that the rain just pretty much dries away, especially once the bag has got more and more patina to it. So as more and more oil soaks into the bag from your natural oils from your hand and all that sort of thing, it does develop a deeper, darker patina, and that gives it more water resistance. In the beginning, you might get some light water stains, but that's only in the very, very beginning. But Byrrhenia patinas so quickly. Like even my Byrrhenia Forberg, let me get it, is actually much darker than what it was when I first got it. It has definitely got patina. It's definitely got scratches as well. But you can kind of see, look at that. Look at how, if I kind of tilt it like that, you see how there's like oil soaked into it. You can see like the oil marks. Obviously, like to the eye in a normal circumstance, you wouldn't see it. It's like that on the front of the bag as well. That's just what happens to Byrrhenia. It soaks up oil, soaks up natural oils from your hand, and it develops a deep, dark patina. And the smooth Byrrhenia actually looks the best out of like between these two when it gets that patina, because it's a smooth surface. So I find that actually patinas more easily. So definitely Byrrhenia leather. If you're in a downpour, it dries away. Water and oil don't mix, so the water just disappears. Other than that, you could potentially look at, like I was saying before, with Swift and Evercolor, they're oil soaked, not as much as Byrrhenia, but they're a bit more like, more so than say Togo and Clemence, so they have a bit more water resistance to them. I have been caught in a downpour with my Swift bag. Obviously, I keep it covered under umbrella, but sometimes the rain's hitting on an angle and it has gotten wet. I pretty much just dry it immediately, but I have had no blistering, no problems. So I would say Swift is another option, and Evercolor. Swift more so than ever color, like I was saying with the answer to the humidity as well. Other than that, I think that's probably about it. That's all the answers I'm gonna give you guys today. Put your questions down below if you want me to answer them, if I haven't already, and I will continue to do these sort of Q&A videos for as long as I keep getting questions. I will continue to do them. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.